Hi, I'm Councillor Phil Murphy. I'm Cabinet Member for Resources for Monmouthshire County Council. The idea of this video is to give you a flavour of the budget proposals, the consultation process and the approach to deal with questions. We are dependent on Welsh Government for our revenue support grant, our core funding settlement, and now this has been received, we've got a much clearer idea of the shape of the budget. However, we've got some £10.1 million worth of pressures that need to be accommodated, way over the £5 million that we originally anticipated in our modelling. With regards to pressures, these are additional costs over and above what we have coped with in the current year. So increased demand, inflation, legislative changes, specific grant funding. There's also unknowns. We still don't know what the pay award is likely to be. The Chancellor has said what he thinks should happen in England, but certain things in Wales are done differently. A lot of these pressures having to be managed in the current year beyond the additional costs and income losses brought about by the pandemic. We're still looking to run services efficiently and effectively as possible so that we can keep them going at a lower cost. The Council has continued to protect the frontline services that is needed and valued by residents of Monmouthshire. Because of the unprecedented circumstances with the pandemic and the challenges facing service delivery at this time, we've had to take a different approach to our budget strategy this year. We have been fortunate to have received an above average funding settlement from Welsh Government, and this has assisted, but will certainly not cover all of the pressures that we are having to manage next year. Having to draw on our limited capital receipts and reserve balances to support the budget proposals, but we have had to consider some increases in fees and charges and a proposed increase in council tax. The budget proposals already contain savings that are being brought about by changes that have been made, such as the closure of Mountain House Special School, where we have reinvested significantly in our in-county provision for children with additional learning needs, such as they can be educated within our mainstream schools or specialist units wherever possible. They also include changes that have been made to waste and recycling services, for instance, where we've made changes to the green waste collection, polypropylene bags, and the closure of the Usk transfer station. Beyond limited increases in fees and charges, we have taken the opportunity to derive further savings from our reduced use of accommodation and mileage brought about by new working practices as a result of the pandemic. Those measures will also benefit the planet as part of the Council's commitment to respond to the climate emergency. Cabinet's view is that we do everything possible to maintain services, albeit we deliver it in different ways. Better to keep services going at a reduced level or on a redesigned basis than to stop it altogether. This past year has been unprecedented. With a severe flooding last February and the pandemic, it's put an extraordinary pressure on public services, on the wider economy and the communities at large. It continues to do so. We're not out of the woods yet. We are grateful to Welsh Government for covering the additional costs and income losses that have fallen on the Council to date, and we urge Welsh Government to do so through this year and next so that the Council doesn't have to revisit its proposals later in the year. We've been very mindful of the pressures placed on services and also the pressures faced by households and businesses who rely on our support and services at this difficult time. And so we have limited where we can the impacts on fees and charges and on services. Whilst we go into consultation with a set of proposals that is fully funded, this does rely on the continued use of our limited capital receipt balances and the one-off contributions from our general reserves. There also remains uncertainties as we move forward In terms of pay award pressures, potential loss of specific grant funding, any impact from COVID the Welsh Government doesn't continue to fully fund. There are also continued pressures on demand-led services that we cannot always predict, in particular in adult social care, children's services and children with additional learning needs. Invariably, we have to turn to council tax. Council tax is a major source of funding for the council, and more so in Monmouthshire than any other county in Wales. With a very heavy heart, given the circumstances, we are forced to look at a slightly increased level of council tax and to go to an increase of 4.95%, which equates to £1.31 per week for a Band D household. Of course, we have the council tax reduction scheme to support those on lower incomes and people whose incomes have suffered during the pandemic, and single people are able to apply for a 25% discount. A lot of uncertainty remains as we remain unclear as to the level of Welsh Government funding beyond next year. If Welsh Government doesn't continue to support local government in recognising the pressures that we continue to face, then this will leave councils across Wales having to face difficult decisions about the services that it can continue to run. And more so in Monmouthshire, where, unlike others, we don't have significant reserves to draw on.